In the small, sleepy town of Willow Creek, life moved at a slow and predictable pace. The streets were lined with trees that swayed gently in the breeze, and neighbors knew each other by name. It was the kind of place where everyone looked out for one another, where kindness came naturally, and where problems seemed smaller because they were shared. But for Sarah Thompson, life had become anything but peaceful. Her world had been turned upside down 6 months ago when her only son, Jake, was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer. Since then, every day felt like a battle she wasn't sure she could win. Sarah was a hard-working woman who had always taken pride in providing for her family. She worked as a waitress at the local diner, earning just enough to keep food on the table and pay the bills. But now, everything had changed. Every penny she earned, and more, went toward Jake's medical expenses. She had sold her car, emptied her savings account, and even borrowed money from friends and family. Still, it wasn't enough. The treatments were expensive, and despite all her efforts, Jake's condition continued to worsen. Every night, Sarah lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering what else she could do. Her heart ached not just for herself, but for Jake. At just 12 years old, he was too young to face such a cruel illness. He deserved to run around outside, play baseball with his friends, and dream about the future. Instead, he spent most of his days lying in a hospital bed, hooked up to machines that beeped and whirred around the clock. Watching him suffer broke Sarah's heart, but giving up was never an option. She would do whatever it took to save her son. One morning, after another sleepless night, Sarah heard about Dr. Michael Hart. He was a doctor who lived and worked in Willow Creek, known for his incredible skill and dedication. People whispered that he could perform miracles, though he himself never claimed such a thing. What made him stand out wasn't just his talent, but his humility. Unlike many doctors who chased fame or fortune, Dr. Hart chose to stay in this quiet little town, helping those who needed him most. For Sarah, hearing about him felt like a lifeline. Maybe, just maybe, he could be the answer to her prayers. With trembling hands, Sarah gathered the last bit of cash she had left and stuffed it into an envelope. She didn't have much, just a few $100s, but it was all she could offer. Determined, she walked to Dr. Hart's clinic, her steps heavy with fear and hope. When she arrived, the waiting room was filled with people. Some looked anxious, others relieved, but all of them carried the same expression of trust in the man behind the door. Finally, it was Sarah's turn. Dr. Hart's office was simple, yet welcoming. There were no fancy decorations, just a desk covered, with papers and a chair where patients sat. Behind the desk sat Dr. Hart himself, a tall, lean man with graying hair and piercing blue eyes. His presence commanded respect, but there was also a warmth about him that put people at ease. When Sarah entered, he greeted her with a soft smile and motioned for her to sit down. "Mrs. Thompson," he said, his voice calm and steady. "Tell me about your son." Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes as she began to explain Jake's situation. She told him about the diagnosis, the treatments, and how nothing seemed to work. Then, unable to hold back any longer, she placed the envelope on his desk. "Please," she begged, her voice shaking, "take this. I know it's not much, but it's all I have. Just, please help my son." Dr. Hart stared at the envelope for a moment, then looked back at Sarah. His expression didn't change, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes. Sadness, perhaps, or understanding. Slowly, he pushed the envelope back toward her. "Mrs. Thompson," he said firmly, "I don't accept extra payments. My job is to heal, not profit. We'll do everything we can for Jake, I promise you that." Sarah froze, unsure of what to say. She had expected resistance, maybe even skepticism, but not outright refusal. Most doctors would have jumped at the chance to take her money, especially given how desperate she was. But Dr. Hart was different. He truly meant what he said. For a brief moment, Sarah felt a spark of hope. If this man cared so deeply about his patients, surely he could save Jake. But as she left the clinic, clutching the envelope tightly in her hand, doubt crept back in. Refusing her money was noble, yes, but it also meant Sarah had nothing left to give. How could she possibly repay him? And what if even his best efforts weren't enough? These questions haunted her as she returned home, her mind racing with possibilities. Little did Sarah know, her encounter with Dr. Hart was only the beginning of an extraordinary journey. In the days that followed, their paths would cross again and again, leading to moments neither of them could have anticipated. Dr. Hart's refusal to accept her money wasn't just an act of kindness. It was the first step in a story that would change both their lives forever. For now, though, Sarah focused on what she could control. She vowed to visit Jake every day, to remind him how much she loved him and how hard she was fighting for him. And deep down, she clung to the belief that somehow, against all odds, things would get better. After all, she thought miracles often came in unexpected forms. The days that followed Sarah's visit to Dr. Hart's clinic were filled with a mix of emotions: hope, frustration, and an overwhelming sense of helplessness. Jake had started a new round of treatments under Dr. Hart's care, but progress was slow. Every time Sarah visited her son in the hospital, she saw the toll the illness was taking on his small body. His once bright eyes now seemed dull, and his laughter, which used to fill their home, had become rare. Still, Sarah refused to give up. She reminded herself of Dr. Hart's words, "We'll do everything we can for Jake." Those words gave her strength, even when everything else felt uncertain. But there was one thing Sarah couldn't shake off: the memory of Dr. Hart refusing her money. It wasn't just the act itself that stayed with her. It was the kindness behind it. In a world where so many people seemed focused on profit, here was a man who genuinely cared about helping others. Sarah found herself thinking about him often, wondering what kind of person he was outside the clinic. Was he always this selfless? Did he ever take a break from his demanding job? And most importantly, how could she possibly thank him? One afternoon, while baking cookies for Jake, Sarah had an idea. She decided to bake an extra batch, not for Jake, but for Dr. Hart. It was a small gesture, something simple yet heartfelt. She didn't have much to offer, but maybe a plate of homemade chocolate chip cookies would show him how grateful she was. The next day, she carefully packed the cookies into a tin and headed back to the clinic. When Sarah arrived, the waiting room was as busy as ever. She hesitated for a moment, unsure if she should interrupt Dr. Hart during such a hectic time. But then she remembered how warm and approachable he had been during their first meeting. Taking a deep breath, she approached the receptionist and asked if she could see him for just a minute. To her surprise, Dr. Hart agreed to meet her almost immediately. "Mrs. Thompson," he said as he entered the consultation room, his brow furrowed slightly in curiosity. "Is everything all right?" Sarah nodded quickly, holding out the tin of cookies. "I just wanted to say thank you," she explained, her cheeks flushing with embarrassment. "These are for you. I know it's not much, but, well, I thought you might like them." Dr. Hart looked at the tin, then back at Sarah. For a brief moment, his usual composed demeanor faltered, and a flicker of emotion crossed his face. "That's very kind of you," he said softly. "But you didn't have to do this." "I know," Sarah replied, "but I wanted to. You've done so much for Jake, and for me, and I don't know how to repay you. This is the least I can do." Dr. Hart accepted the tin with a nod, setting it gently on his desk. Then, to Sarah's surprise, he gestured for her to sit down. "Would you like to stay for a few minutes?" he asked. "It's been a long day, and it might be nice to talk to someone who isn't asking about test results or prescriptions." Sarah hesitated. She hadn't expected this invitation, but something about the way Dr. Hart spoke made her feel comfortable. Slowly, she took a seat, and they began to talk. At first, the conversation revolved around Jake, his treatment plan, his progress, and the challenges ahead. But as the minutes passed, the tone shifted. Dr. Hart opened up in a way Sarah hadn't anticipated. He told her about his own struggles, particularly the loss of his wife several years ago. Her death had left him devastated, and for a long time he questioned whether he could continue practicing medicine. But eventually, he realized that helping others was the best way to honor her memory. "She believed in me," he said quietly. "And I think she'd be proud of the work I'm doing now." Sarah listened intently, her heart aching for the pain Dr. Hart carried. She had assumed he was invincible, a man who saved lives without hesitation. But hearing him speak about his grief made her realize he was human, just like everyone else. They shared a bond now, one forged through loss and resilience. By the end of their conversation, Sarah felt closer to him, not as a doctor, but as a person. Over the following weeks, Sarah continued visiting the clinic, not just to check on Jake, but also to see Dr. Hart. Each time she brought something small, a loaf of banana bread, a thermos of soup, or simply a smile and some encouraging words. At first, she worried that her visits might be intrusive, but Dr. Hart welcomed her warmly every time. Their conversations became longer and more personal, covering topics ranging from their favorite books to their hopes for the future. Through these interactions, Sarah learned more about Dr. Hart's life beyond the clinic. He loved gardening and spent his weekends tending to a small vegetable patch behind his house. He enjoyed classical music and often played recordings in his office to create a calming atmosphere for his patients. And despite his serious demeanor, he had a dry sense of humor that occasionally caught Sarah off guard. Once, when she jokingly asked if he ever got tired of being so perfect, he chuckled and replied, "Far from it. I'm just as flawed as anyone, else I'm just better at hiding it." For Sarah, these moments brought a sense of comfort she hadn't felt in months. Talking to Dr. Hart reminded her that she wasn't alone in her struggles. His presence was a reminder that even in the darkest times, there were still good people in the world. People who cared deeply and gave freely, without expecting anything in return. Meanwhile, Jake's condition showed slight improvements. While he was far from fully recovered, the new treatment seemed to be working. Sarah credited Dr. Hart for this progress, but she also knew it wouldn't have been possible without the emotional support he provided. Knowing that someone believed in her and her son made all the difference. It gave her the strength to keep going, even on days when giving up felt like the easier option. As their friendship grew, Sarah began to wonder if there was something more she could do to express her gratitude. Baking cookies and bringing food was nice, but it felt inadequate compared to what Dr. Hart had done for her family. She wanted to do something meaningful, something that would truly honor the impact he had made on their lives. But no matter how hard she thought, she couldn't come up with an idea that felt right. What Sarah didn't realize was that her presence alone was already making a profound impact on Dr. Hart. Years of dedicating himself to his work had left him isolated, emotionally distant from those around him. He had built walls to protect himself from the pain of losing patients, but those walls also kept him from forming genuine connections. Sarah's kindness broke through those barriers, reminding him of the joy that came from human connection. For the first time in years, he found himself looking forward to their conversations, eager to share parts of his life he rarely spoke about. Little did either of them know, their bond would soon lead to something extraordinary. What started as a simple exchange of gratitude was about to transform into a story that would touch the hearts of everyone in Willow Creek. But for now, Sarah and Dr. Hart cherished the moments they shared, finding solace and strength in each other's company. Their unlikely friendship was proof that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness could create the biggest ripples of change. As weeks turned into months, Sarah's visits to Dr. Hart became a regular part of her routine. She no longer felt like just another patient's mother. She was beginning to see herself as someone who mattered to him. Their conversations had grown deeper, filled with shared stories, laughter, and even moments of quiet reflection. For Sarah, these interactions were more than just a way to pass the time. They were a lifeline, a reminder that kindness still existed in the world. But, despite the comfort she found in their friendship, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she owed Dr. Hart something greater. Every cookie she baked, every word of gratitude she offered seemed insignificant compared to what he had done for Jake. And for her. She wanted to do something extraordinary, something that would truly express how much his generosity meant to her. Yet no matter how hard she thought, she couldn't come up with an idea that felt right. One evening, while sitting at her kitchen table flipping through old photo albums, inspiration struck. Her fingers paused on a picture of Jake taken before his illness. A bright smile spread across his face as he held up a trophy from a school science fair. It was a moment frozen in time, a reminder of the life they once had. Suddenly, an idea began to form in her mind. What if she could create something similar, not just for Jake, but for Dr. Hart, something that celebrated not only his skill as a doctor, but also the profound impact he'd had on so many lives? The next morning, Sarah set to work. She started by reaching out to people whose lives Dr. Hart had touched, former patients, their families, and even colleagues who worked alongside him. At first, she wasn't sure how they would respond. Would they think her request was strange? Would they be willing to share their stories? To her surprise, everyone she contacted was eager to help. Some sent heartfelt letters. Others shared photos, and a few even recorded video messages expressing their gratitude. Sarah poured her heart into the project, spending hours organizing the material she collected. She turned her living room into a makeshift workspace, spreading papers and photographs across the floor. Each story she read brought tears to her eyes. There was one from a young woman who credited Dr. Hart with saving her life after a car accident. Another came from an elderly man whose cancer went into remission, thanks to Dr. Hart's innovative treatment plan. And then there were countless notes from parents like herself, thanking him for giving them hope during their darkest days. As the weeks passed, Sarah transformed these stories into a book. She titled it, "The Man Who Saved Us All," a phrase she felt perfectly captured Dr. Hart's essence. The cover featured a collage of photos, smiling faces, heartfelt embraces, and candid moments from the clinic. Inside, each page told a different story, accompanied by pictures and quotes from those whose lives he had changed. It wasn't just a tribute to his medical expertise. It was a celebration of the compassion and humanity he brought to his work. Finally, after months of effort, the book was complete. Holding the finished product in her hands, Sarah felt a mix of pride and nervousness. She knew how much this meant to her, but she couldn't predict how Dr. Hart would react. Would he appreciate it, or would he find it overwhelming? Taking a deep breath, she decided to take the risk. After all, this was her way of saying thank you, not just for saving Jake's life, but for being the kind of person who inspired others to believe in miracles. The day she planned to give him the book, Sarah woke up early. She dressed carefully, choosing an outfit that made her feel confident yet approachable. Then, clutching the book tightly in her hands, she headed to the clinic. When she arrived, the waiting room was unusually empty, a rare moment of calm in an otherwise busy schedule. She approached the receptionist and asked if Dr. Hart was available. Within minutes, he appeared, looking slightly surprised to see her. "Mrs. Thompson," he said with a warm smile. "This is unexpected. Is everything all right?" Sarah nodded, though her voice trembled slightly as she spoke. "I'm fine, thank you. Actually, I came here because, well, I wanted to show you something." She handed him the book, her hands shaking as she did so. Dr. Hart took the book, his brow furrowing in curiosity. As he read the title, his expression softened. Slowly he opened it, flipping through the pages. His eyes widened as he saw the photos, the letters, and the messages from people whose lives he had touched. For several long moments he didn't say anything, simply turning page after page in silence. When he finally looked up, his eyes glistened with unshed tears. "Sarah," he said softly, his voice thick with emotion, "I don't know what to say. This is incredible." "You don't have to say anything," Sarah replied, her own eyes filling with tears. "I just wanted you to know how much you mean to all of us. You've saved so many lives, not just physically but emotionally too. You've given people hope when they needed it most, and I wanted to make sure you knew that." Dr. Hart shook his head, clearly overwhelmed. "I never expected any of this," he admitted. "I just try to do my job to help where I can. But seeing this, it reminds me why I became a doctor in the first place." For the rest of the afternoon, they sat together going through the book page by page. Dr. Hart laughed at some of the funny anecdotes, teared up at others, and marveled at the sheer number of people who had taken the time to contribute. By the end of the day, he looked at Sarah with a mixture of awe and gratitude. "Thank you," he said simply. This means more to me than I can put into words." Word of Sarah's gesture quickly spread throughout Willow Creek. People who had contributed to the book proudly shared their involvement, and soon the entire town was buzzing with excitement. Local newspapers picked up the story, publishing articles about the doctor who refused money from a grieving mother and the unbelievable gift she gave him in return. The book itself became a cherished keepsake, passed around among residents and eventually displayed in the clinic's waiting room. For Dr. Hart, the tribute was both humbling and inspiring. It reminded him of the power of human connection and the ripple effect of kindness. He began to see his work in a new light, not just as a series of treatments and diagnoses, but as part of a larger mission to bring hope and healing to those in need. Inspired by Sarah's example, he started mentoring young doctors, teaching them not only about medicine but also about empathy and humility. As for Sarah, creating the book gave her a renewed sense of purpose. Watching the community rally around Dr. Hart filled her with joy and pride. More importantly, it reinforced her belief that even the smallest acts of kindness could lead to extraordinary outcomes. Though Jake's journey was far from over, she felt stronger and more hopeful than ever before. She knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, she had a support system, a network of people who cared deeply about her family and her son. In the end, the book wasn't just a gift for Dr. Hart. It was a testament to the strength of the human spirit. It proved that when people came together to celebrate kindness and resilience, they could create something truly remarkable. And for Sarah and Dr. Hart, it marked the beginning of a bond that would continue to grow, shaping their lives in ways neither of them could have imagined. The impact of Sarah's gesture didn't stop at Dr. Hart or the walls of his clinic. Like a stone dropped into a still pond, it created ripples that spread far beyond what anyone could have anticipated. Within days, news of the man who saved us all reached every corner of Willow Creek. People who had never met Dr. Hart personally were moved by the stories in the book and inspired by the selflessness he embodied. What started as one woman's heartfelt tribute quickly evolved into something much bigger, a celebration of kindness, resilience, and the power of community. Local businesses began to take notice. The owner of a nearby cafe hung a sign in the window offering discounts to anyone associated with Dr. Hart's clinic, patients, staff, or visitors. "Dr. Hart has done so much for this town," the owner told a reporter. "This is our way of saying thank you." Other shops followed suit, donating portions of their profits to support underprivileged patients or hosting fundraisers to help cover medical expenses. Even the local grocery store set up a donation box where customers could contribute money for families struggling with healthcare costs. The movement didn't stop there. Volunteers poured in, eager to assist however they could. Some offered free transportation for patients traveling long distances to see Dr. Hart, while others organized meal deliveries for families too overwhelmed to cook. A group of high school students launched a campaign called Hope for Jake, raising funds specifically for Jake's ongoing treatment. They held bake sales, car washes, and even a charity concert featuring local musicians. The entire town rallied behind them, proving that even small acts of kindness could add up to something extraordinary. For Sarah, witnessing this outpouring of support was overwhelming in the best possible way. She had always known that Willow Creek was a close-knit community, but seeing how many people cared about her family touched her deeply. For the first time in months, she felt less alone. The financial burden that had weighed so heavily on her shoulders began to lift as donations poured in and neighbors stepped forward to help. More importantly, she saw how her actions had sparked a chain reaction of generosity. By honoring Dr. Hart, she had unknowingly inspired others to pay it forward. Meanwhile, Jake's condition continued to improve. While the road to recovery was still long and uncertain, the new treatment plan seemed to be working. His energy levels increased and he began spending more time outside, playing with friends and laughing again. Watching her son slowly regain his strength filled Sarah with hope. She knew none of this would have been possible without Dr. Hart's dedication, or without the unwavering support of the community rallying around them. But the ripple effect wasn't limited to Jake and his family. It also transformed Dr. Hart himself. Before Sarah's gesture, he had often felt isolated, consumed by the demands of his job and haunted by the losses he couldn't prevent. Though he loved what he did, the emotional toll sometimes made him question whether he was truly making a difference. Seeing the book, and the countless lives he had touched, reminded him why he became a doctor in the first place. It reignited his passion for helping others and gave him a renewed sense of purpose. Inspired by Sarah's example, Dr. Hart decided to expand his efforts beyond individual patients. He started mentoring young doctors, sharing not only his medical expertise, but also the lessons he'd learned about empathy and compassion. Being a good doctor isn't just about curing illnesses, he told them during one session. It's about listening, understanding, and being present for your patients when they need you most. Many of these young doctors went on to implement similar practices in their own careers, spreading Dr. Hart's philosophy far beyond Willow Creek. He also began hosting free health seminars at the community center, teaching residents about preventive care and healthy living. These events drew large crowds, not just because of Dr. Hart's reputation, but because people genuinely wanted to learn how to take better care of themselves and their loved ones. At each seminar, Sarah attended faithfully, taking notes and asking questions. She wanted to ensure that Jake stayed healthy once he fully recovered, and she appreciated Dr. Hart's practical advice. As the months passed, Sarah and Dr. Hart's friendship deepened even further. They continued meeting regularly, though their conversations now extended beyond Jake's treatment. They talked about life, dreams, and the future, topics that reminded them both of the beauty in everyday moments. Sarah found comfort in knowing she had someone she could rely on, someone who understood her struggles without judgment. And for Dr. Hart, Sarah's presence brought a sense of connection he hadn't felt in years. Their bond was no longer just about gratitude. It was about mutual respect and shared humanity. One day, while walking through the park together, Sarah turned to Dr. Hart and said, "You know, I never expected any of this to happen. When I started that book, I just wanted to say thank you. But look at what it's done. For you, for Jake, for everyone." Dr. Hart smiled, his eyes reflecting the sunlight filtering through the trees. "Sometimes," he replied, "the smallest gestures can create the biggest changes. You taught me that, Sarah, and I'll never forget it." Their conversation shifted to lighter topics: Jake's recent progress, upcoming events in town, and plans for the future. Both of them knew challenges still lay ahead, but they faced them with courage and hope. Together, they had built something remarkable, a community united by kindness and a shared belief in the power of human connection. By the end of the year, Willow Creek had transformed in subtle yet profound ways. Neighbors greeted each other more warmly, strangers offered help without hesitation, and people took pride in being part of a town that valued compassion above all else. The story of Sarah and Dr. Hart served as a reminder that even in difficult times there was always room for light. And for those fortunate enough to witness it, the ripple effect of kindness was nothing short of extraordinary. In the quiet moments, when Sarah reflected on everything that had happened, she marveled at how one decision, to refuse money from a grieving mother, had led to such an incredible chain of events. It wasn't just about curing illnesses or repaying debts. It was about two broken souls finding strength in each other and creating a legacy of hope that would endure for generations to come. Years passed, and life in Willow Creek continued to move forward. The town remained the same in many ways. The trees swayed gently in the breeze, neighbors still exchanged warm greetings, and the sense of community remained as strong as ever. But beneath the surface, things had changed. The story of Sarah Thompson and Dr. Michael Hart had left an indelible mark on everyone who heard it. It wasn't just a tale of survival or gratitude. It was a testament to the power of kindness, resilience, and the connections that bind us together. Jake grew up to be a healthy, vibrant young man. His battle with cancer became a distant memory, though the scars, both physical and emotional, remained. He often spoke about how those difficult years shaped him into the person he was today. "I learned so much from my mom and Dr. Hart," he told friends during a high school graduation speech. "They taught me that no matter how hard things get, you can always find strength in others. And when you're able to, you should give back." True to his words, Jake dedicated himself to helping others. In college, he studied biology with dreams of becoming a doctor, inspired by the man who saved his life. For Sarah, watching Jake thrive filled her with pride and gratitude. She often reflected on the journey they had been through, the sleepless nights, the moments of despair, and the unexpected acts of kindness that carried them through. Though she never stopped missing the simpler days before Jake's illness, she knew their struggles had brought something beautiful into their lives, a deeper appreciation for human connection. Her friendship with Dr. Hart remained one of the most meaningful relationships she'd ever had. They continued to meet regularly, sharing stories, laughter, and advice. Even after Jake graduated and moved away for college, Sarah stayed close to Dr. Hart, cherishing the bond they had built. Dr. Hart, too, found peace in the later years of his life. The tribute Sarah created, the book, The Man Who Saved Us All, became a cherished keepsake not only for him but for the entire town. It reminded everyone of the good that existed in the world and the importance of lifting each other up during difficult times. Inspired by the stories within its pages, Dr. Hart expanded his efforts beyond Willow Creek. He traveled to medical conferences, sharing his experiences and encouraging other doctors to prioritize compassion alongside expertise. "We're not just treating diseases," he often said. "We're treating people. And sometimes the smallest act of kindness can make the biggest difference." As he grew older, Dr. Hart gradually stepped back from his practice, passing the torch to younger generations. Many of the doctors he mentored went on to become leaders in their fields, carrying forward his philosophy of empathy and dedication. His legacy lived on, not just in the patients he treated, but in the countless lives he touched indirectly. When he finally retired, the town threw him a celebration, filling the community center with music, food, and heartfelt speeches. Sarah stood at the podium, tears streaming down her face as she thanked him once again for everything he had done. "You didn't just save my son's life," she said. "You saved mine too. You gave me hope when I needed it most, and you showed me what true kindness looks like." Even after Dr. Hart's passing, his spirit remained alive in Willow Creek. The clinic where he worked was renamed in his honor, and a scholarship fund was established to support aspiring doctors who shared his values. Every year, the town held a day of kindness in his memory, encouraging residents to perform random acts of generosity. Children learned about his story in school, growing up with the understanding that even small actions could create big changes. Sarah played an active role in keeping Dr. Hart's memory alive. She volunteered at the clinic, helped organize events, and frequently visited schools to speak about her experience. Her message was always the same: don't underestimate the power of kindness. You never know how far it might reach. People admired her strength and resilience, but more than anything, they admired the way she turned her pain into purpose. By honoring Dr. Hart's legacy, she ensured that his impact would continue for generations to come. In time, Jake returned to Willow Creek after completing medical school. Following in Dr. Hart's footsteps, he opened a free clinic aimed at providing care to underserved families. The walls were adorned with framed copies of The Man Who Saved Us All, serving as a constant reminder of where it all began. On opening day, Sarah stood beside her son, beaming with pride as she watched him welcome his first patients. "This is what it's all about," she whispered to herself, tears welling up in her eyes. Hope. Though Sarah eventually grew older and slower, she never lost her spark. She spent her golden years surrounded by loved ones, her son, grandchildren, and countless friends who considered her family. Her home remained a place of warmth and hospitality, just as it had been during the darkest days of Jake's illness. Visitors often remarked on the aura of gratitude that seemed to radiate from her. "Life hasn't always been easy," she admitted during one interview. "But every challenge taught me something valuable. I learned that we're stronger together, that kindness is contagious, and that miracles often come in unexpected forms." Looking back on her life, Sarah realized that meeting Dr. Hart wasn't just a coincidence. It was a turning point. His refusal to accept her money had sparked a chain reaction that transformed not only her family's life, but the entire town. It reminded her that true wealth wasn't measured in dollars, but in the connections we forge and the impact we have on others. And while she missed Dr. Hart dearly, she knew his spirit lived on, not just in the work he inspired, but in the countless acts of kindness he set into motion. In the end, the story of Sarah, Jake, and Dr. Hart wasn't just about overcoming adversity. It was about finding light in the darkness, building bridges where none existed, and creating a ripple effect of hope that transcended generations. Their journey proved that even in the toughest times, humanity has the power to shine brightly. And for those fortunate enough to witness it, the legacy of kindness they left behind served as a timeless reminder. No act of compassion is ever too small, and no gesture of gratitude goes unnoticed.